Right, we are officially watching In the Market here on AM Live. We turn our focus this morning on the state of construction in Kenya. Of course, that particular story by Trevor Ombija sets the stone. We're talking about stones always today, so it set the tone for a conversation here on AM Live. And of course, allow me to introduce my guest again. We have Pradeep Paundrana, who is the CEO of Athi River Minings. Also, we have Stephen Oundo, who is a board chair of National Construction Authority. He's a board chair. And we have George Wachiuri, who is the CEO of Optiven Limited. And we have Lee Karuri, who is the CEO of Home Africa. And we discussed today about the construction industry, right? Did I get it right?
Chairman.
Chairman. Oh, chairman. Good. Thank you. Thank you for that correction, Bwana Lee. Well, looking at that foregoing story, yeah, and we're talking about the construction sector. We're talking about cement. We're talking about total quality management. Right from the manufacturing, looking at the supply chain, going down to actually the retailer and the consumer. What do you think about the state of construction lately? And I know this squarely falls also into within the remit of the National Construction Authority, because you are the people who are mandated to see that, yes, we have construction which is up to scratch. Looking at that particular story, you reacted. What was your reaction?
Thank you very much. What I would first like to bring to the fore here is that when you see a building collapse, it's not one thing that has gone wrong. It's a series of things. Mm-hmm. And it's just that the collapse is the manifestation of all those things. A building may go down because the structural design is wrong. It could also be the design of the steel.
Yes.
All right? You could still have that right, but it is put together wrongly. Mm-hmm. And that is why we like bringing in the element. Who are the consultants? If you look at any building that collapses, at the point of construction, mm-hmm. you'll find that there are no consultants.
All right. Maybe we should also weigh in on this, Mr. George.
I'm thinking that most of these developers, they're entrepreneurs, and lately there are a lot of construction projects going on. Mm-hmm. So the demand for construction is very high, and we must recognize that, as the architect says, mm-hmm. we need to work on our approvals and also getting these professionals, because the people I've interacted with, they say that if they want to do 4 floors, 5 floors, mm-hmm. they have relatives that they know how to do houses. They have a cousin who knows how to do the house, and what they do, they call them up and say, George Wachiuri, come over, I want to do 5 floors. Yet, George Wachiuri is a draftsman. He's not an architect, not an engineer. And they move on to do the house. So when the worst happens, then they say, you see, now the professionals are not participating. So I think for us as Kenyans, it's good to pay that extra cost mm-hmm. and pay for these professionals, pay for that architect, pay for that engineer, and then we should not follow shortcuts, mm-hmm. Whereby you go to the county and find your way out mm-hmm. for an approval to be done. Look at some areas like Eastlands. Mm-hmm. We have many developers developing properties without even title deed. They only have share certificate.
Yes.
And we have a lot of challenges, and I sympathize with my brother here because they have a lot of work. So they need capacity to manage our people, because some of these people, by the way, they're just people in business, and they want to cash in the real estate. But we need to create awareness that as you do those 3, 4, 5, 6 floors, be very careful, because there are people that are being endangered. So we need to create a lot of awareness, and I'm happy that the National Construction Authority have been very busy registering engineers, the contractors, and we can only support them, especially for us who are doing development, so that we also create awareness to our people.
All right. Yes. Of course, you mentioned a very key component also in all this construction industry element, the title deed, right? And we have the National Land Act also that was enforced, the bill that is an act right now. We can see what sort of discernible difference will it bring in the market. You also have been a culprit, right? You'll tell us your story on how actually you lost millions of shillings because of a fake title deed, and how also that set you in a sort of a depression. You're really down in the dumps. But right now, of course, you have your own business right now, which is a runaway success. You'll tell us more about that. if we're in the construction business or someone wants to break into the construction business, how do you do that? What are the right components that should be in place before also you venture out? Lee has been in the construction business for quite a while right now, so he is a sort of a maverick in this. Yeah, you can tell us what has been the challenges looking at that sort of construction that was coming up in Kahawa, and you look at the cracks in there. What are some of the things that we need to be aware of, especially for people who are planning to put structures in Kitengela, where we have so many people buying land, or other places in the country?
Okay, thank you. For a long time in this country, we have had one big problem of planning. That's where the planning has been a big challenge.
Yes.
You'll see that the amount of buildings that are within unplanned communities,
yes,
within this country, either in the city of Nairobi or even within the counties, is very high. It's not that planning is difficult. Plans have been there, but they have not been enforced. And when the mindset of unplanned communities comes in, and people see that the areas they are building are unplanned, some of them have taken that attitude to also have unplanned buildings. And to make it worse, corruption. They get an occupation certificate by paying people. They are able to get people housed in very unsafe buildings. But I'm happy to say that that is now changing. We are starting to see discipline. We are starting to see better buildings. We are starting to see professionals being used more.
Good to note. But before we take a short break, we have some blocks here that Pradeep came with this morning. And you mentioned about concrete mixture, how key it can be. You can do all the right things, have the proper planning, but also if you have a poor workmanship down on the ground, then your building is bound to crumble down at some point. Tell us about these particular blocks and why are they here this morning, Mr. Pradeep?
Thank you. These are standard test blocks that contractors are supposed to produce on site once they do a concrete mix. This is a 150 millimeter by 150 millimeter cube.
Right.
This goes to a laboratory and is crushed to determine the concrete strength. Now the two cubes look identical, but one is what is called a class 20 concrete and the other is a class 40 concrete. A class 20 is a much lower strength, class 40 is a higher strength. There are very few buildings in Nairobi until recently which were using a class 40 concrete mixture. As we are going more and more high-rise construction in this country, the needs of the construction industry have changed, but the education of contractors and the entire construction industry is lacking. Now, different types of cement are available to produce different strengths of concrete. 20 years ago, majority of the cement that we used in this country was what was called 32.5 grade, which is a 32.5 Newton crushing strength. And we now produce 42.5 and 52.5 as well. The irony is that the stronger the cement, the stronger the concrete you can make at a cheaper cost. And this is something which we need to educate the market, the consumers and the contractors. Higher strength concrete will allow you to build stronger structures with leaner columns, wider spans, and you have more usable, more lettable space as well. So whilst we have collapsing buildings, it is not necessarily because of greed or corruption, it is also because of lack of education.
Now, you told us, yes, we have different blocks. And suppose now I've started maybe developing my site, and I had started maybe with sort of not really an inferior block or a different grade of a block, and we're not following any building codes, and you see, oh my goodness, I have 2 floors. Why can't I put 5 more on top? Down, you had, I don't know how you classified, you said N3 or N4?
Class 20, class 30, class 40.
Yeah, the classes right now.
Class, yeah.
If I started with class, let's say 20, and the higher grade is class 40, and I want now to put more floors, how will that also compromise the integrity of my structure?
So exactly. Let me just illustrate. I was once in a site in one of these dense residential areas, and a contractor I met said, the owner of this property has asked me to to build this. It was a 4-story building. Now he wants me to put a 5 or 6 stories.
Yes.
And I said, so how are you managing the structure? And he says, I did 2-story buildings, then I started 3-story, now 4-story. I'm using the same method that I do. And I said, how do you choose your materials? He says, the owner of the property supplies the materials, so I have no choice. And he wants me to put a floor after floor, and then whether the slab is ready for the next floor or not, he wants me to speed up. So there's that issue of understanding, not only by the developers, by the contractors as well. If you are designing a building from the principles, engineering principles, it's a high-story building, you need the right strength of concrete from the foundation upwards, in your columns, in your beams, in your slabs, to hold the structure. Yeah.
Okay, do you then have documentation for this, that yes, this is a sort of the cement that was bought, this is a sort of steel structure that was put up, and there is a particular documentation? Maybe the National Construction Authority come to the phone, you asked for this particular documentation. Is that so?
Yes,
you do?
Maybe, yeah. When we're doing our sting operations, as I told you, the process of construction, there's so many processes.
Yes, yes.
And it just takes 1 or 2 things to go wrong for the building to come down. Let me point out like these concrete cubes that we have here. Even these have issues in the sense that we have a level sometimes of ethics where the contractor is so corrupt, he will make specific cubes for testing. And
For testing. But what goes to the ground
But
is
what
something
goes to
else.
the ground is something else. And that's why part of the quality control measures we insist on the site is having a clerk of works. Because what you want is the concrete, you want the concrete cube to be made from the concrete that is being used to put up the building. And it's also done in sections because, you know, the mixing in terms of the quality, there's sometimes a bit of variance. So you want the concrete that was used for the foundation, the one that was used for the columns, the ones for the slab, intermittently to be tested. So we, like the National Construction Authority, when we come to the site, it's not only just seeing that the structural drawings have been approved. It's not just seeing that we have a structural engineer on site, but we also want to look at what notes has the structural engineer put to be sure that he's actually supervising.
Right. George, then you are in the real estate business. Do you normally follow these procedures? What is your experience down on the ground?
I know that there are many developers out there who are listening to us. Some of us who are doing construction near Nairobi, we are very keen on adhering to the procedures. However, I'm sure the National Construction Authority have a lot of work, as I said earlier, but we maybe have seen the light. We can be able to educate others that are out there in different counties and they're doing construction. Because one of the things that we must recognize is that we have shortage of these professionals. If you compare the rate of development, the rate at which we are doing houses, we have a shortage of professionals.
Yes.
But it is possible for all the parties to work together. Like for me, I'm part of a member of Kenya Private Developers, whereby we are members and we are saying every developer must sign code of ethics, code of conduct, so that if Optiven constructs a house that is collapsing, I'll be blacklisted. And of course, I'm under the penalty of National Construction Authority. So we have a job, developers who are a bit advanced, like Lee here and others, to educate others. And as we educate them, we also lobby with the government to educate more professionals. Because by the year 2030, we are projecting to have a house demand of about 15 million, assuming that a household is four people. That means we need more houses. So if we don't take action now, we are going to be in a total mess. But we are ready to educate our people, to educate our engineers, the people we work with, so that we are able to follow the due process, because we must take care of our people.